In part three of Negotiation for Entrepreneurs, Holly learns about the role interests, options, and legitimacy play in the negotiation process. An interest is anything of concern to us, something that we want or need. Like everyone else, Holly needs food. Getting enough to eat is one of her interests. Having shelter, a place to live, is an interest. She also wants to be safe from harm. Being accepted as a member of the group, which includes being recognized and acknowledged for our accomplishments, is an interest we all share. Esteem, a sense of self, or a feeling of importance is another major type of interest. And realizing our potential, self-actualization, self-expression, is a need captured in the military's advertising slogan, "Be all that you can be." Thus, the term interests encompasses a wide range of needs, desires, and motives relating to both tangible things and intangible items, such as the need to be respected or even a lust for power. These 5 types of interests are restatements of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is most frequently presented as a pyramid. It can help us understand the relative priorities among our interests. Food, water, clothing, shelter, and other physiological needs must be satisfied first. Protection from predators and other sources of harm follows closely. Risk and loss aversion likewise tie into the basic need for safety. They can be very rational or emotionally driven interests that distort thinking about other rational aspects of business deals. Everyone needs to be accepted. Once the primary needs have been taken care of, we want to have assurance that we fit in, that we belong. Love may not be all we need, to paraphrase the Beatles, but it is a fundamental part of our household of interests. Friendship and sexual intimacy arise in part because they satisfy the primal need to be loved and accepted. I am somebody, Jesse Jackson taught impoverished and unempowered poor people on the south side of Chicago to say. It became a mantra. Respect, including self-respect, is vital to our well-being. Damage to self-esteem is often a major part of torts leading to lawsuits, which is one reason apologies are so powerful in the settlement context. When the Army adopted the slogan, "Be all that you can be," it was tapping into our basic need to make the most of our abilities. Like other organisms, humans seek to realize their own potential. Morality, creativity, problem-solving, and the ability to accept and deal with facts become part of our self-actualization. All of this together, from Holly's perspective, is what she thinks will make her happy, or at least less unhappy. The first step in understanding the parties' interests, therefore, is to determine their tangible, material interests. What food, shelter, clothing, medical care, and other basics do Holly and her negotiating partners need? How much will it cost to take care of those? Like everyone else, Holly needs protection from harm. But what about corporations and other legal entities? What kind of physiological needs do they have? It's obvious that a corporation needs money to continue in operation, but it would be simplistic to think of its financial interest as limited to how much money it has in the bank or what it must pay for present needs. Future income is also a concern. The Maslow pyramid reminds us to think about intangible interests as well. In many cases, self-esteem will trump money because the primary needs have already been adequately satisfied. Love, belonging, and acceptance are very strong needs, which is why being fired can be so devastating. Even if we find another job, this rejection can leave deep scars. A need for ego gratification may be the driving force behind a push for some terms in a potential deal. Finally, Holly, like every other human being, has a need for meaning. She needs to have a sense of purpose, to be involved in something that is bigger than herself, that's larger than life. This need is illustrated by the following story. Arriving at the edge of a medieval city in the 12th century, a weary traveler asks a worker what he's doing. "I'm breaking up rocks, as you can plainly see," the worker replies, somewhat miffed at the question. The traveler moves on to a second laborer and asks him the same question as well. "I'm earning a living for my family," he replies. When asked the same question, a third worker, dripping with sweat and obviously fatigued, stands up straight and beams as he responds. "You see that cathedral off in the distance? I'm building that cathedral." In the best organizations, people know what they are about. They know that they are building cathedrals, not just busting rocks. If asked, they would not need to go look up a written mission statement, important as these are, to answer a stranger's question. This is because the purpose is expressed so many ways in the work of the organization. It becomes part of what the organization lives and breathes, what it embodies. While Holly may occasionally get caught up in the demand of here and now concerns, such as meeting payroll or finding investors for the next stage of development, she'll be more likely to succeed if she keeps her eye on the grand vision and helps her employees and other stakeholders share in that vision. They will be most engaged if they are building cathedrals, not just busting rocks. Interests fall into two broad categories: tangible and intangible interest. For the most part, tangible interests can be satisfied with money. For example, Holly Jolly Salsa's interest in sustainable growth will be met in part with deals with grocery stores, jar manufacturers and other suppliers, and every other business relationship the company enters into. Intangible interests include enhanced reputation of the company, emotional satisfaction of those working on the project, higher level of employee engagement, and more. It helps to take an inventory of your organization's interests and those of the other parties, both tangible and intangible, as part of your preparation for negotiations. We've spent a chunk of time looking at interest, and we could go into the subject in much more depth. The reason we work on developing an understanding of the interest element is that interests are key to strategic negotiation. To get the best possible outcomes, Holly must focus on the other person's interests. Why? Because to persuade them to help her get what she wants, her interests, they will need to get what they want. In fact, if she can't help them satisfy their interests better than they can without her, they'll walk away. They'll go elsewhere. The company selling the jars Holly needs for her salsa has business interests just like Holly's Jolly Salsa does. The company needs to increase sales, expand its customer base, enhance its reputation and strengthen its brand, make a profit, and more. The better Holly understands the interests of the companies she deals with, the more likely she'll be to craft deals that satisfy her interests well. In a subsequent lesson, we'll talk about the challenges of negotiating with agents of organizations. For now, I just want to call attention to the fact that Holly should consider both the interests of the jar manufacturing company and those of the sales agent and her supervisor when negotiating the terms of a contract for jars for her salsa. The corporation may be a lifeless, cold-hearted machine, but the people who run it and make the day-to-day decisions have flesh and blood and emotions and egos and distorted thinking and good and bad judgment and all the other things that make up human beings. In short, Sarah, the sales agent, and George, her supervisor, have interests too, and those interests have an impact on the decisions they make on behalf of the jar manufacturer. To develop a strategy for getting what Holly's Jolly Salsa needs, Holly must consider the interests of the people and entities that can help or hinder that effort. Understanding the strategic interplay requires tools and concepts that are the subject of a separate course. In this introductory course, we have time only to stress that Holly will neglect the interest of others at her peril. She needs to develop the habit of continually asking, who can help me? How can they help me? And why would they want to? The strategic negotiation model focuses on value creation, the development of options to satisfy the interests of the parties involved in the negotiation. An option is a potential term of the agreement, what we might do together. Thus, an option is what Holly's Jolly Salsa might do in exchange for something the supplier, bank, lawyer, or other party might do in exchange. So in working with her jar supplier, Holly might want to explore the possibility of extended payment terms, volume discounts, custom labeling, free delivery, special shapes for the jars, and much else. In the strategic negotiation process, we jointly develop options to satisfy our respective interests. This is a process of discovering each party's interests and generating potentially acceptable options that satisfy those interests. And as we work together, we gain a deeper and fuller understanding of our respective interests and how we might help each other satisfy them. The discussion of options reveals more about our interests and vice versa. As we communicate, we discover ways to expand the pie, to do things for the other side that don't cost us much, and vice versa. But it's not just a discovery process, it's also a creative process. Working together, we create something new possibilities for exchanging goods and services of benefit to the parties that would not be possible without the negotiation and potential agreement. To create great deals for Holly's Jolly Salsa, Holly needs to tap into right-brained thinking. She needs to generate as many ideas for potential options as possible. In serious negotiations, such as crafting the terms of a deal with an angel investor, she might want to bring in several people, an ad hoc advisory board, to engage in a brainstorming process. As Thomas Edison said, to have a great idea, have a lot of them. Underlying every negotiation are cultural norms, common practices, legal rules, a course of behavior between the parties, the terms of similar deals that one or both parties have made, what other people do in similar situations, and so on. We call these aspects of a negotiation the shared standards of legitimacy. They affect the degree to which we find options acceptable or objectionable, irrespective of how well they might satisfy our interests. Holly has been working with the supplier of the jars for her salsa and is on the verge of getting a deal for the shipment she'll need in the fall, which is a little over 3 months away. The sales agent is trying to get her to agree to take ownership of the jars now, even though they won't ship for months. You won't have to pay for them until they actually ship, the salesperson says. Holly has never heard of this kind of proposal before and isn't sure what to do. Holly might simply say no or make some demand in return, but if she does, she could easily fall into the pushback mode common to positional bargaining, which can quickly degenerate into a tug of war over the question of who is right or who will win. This kind of bargaining is not good for the relationship and tends to undermine the generation of creative options for expanding the pie. Instead, the pie shrinks and may disappear altogether. I like to explain the legitimacy element with the following story from Getting to Yes. Jim's 3-year-old car has been totaled by a reckless driver with insufficient insurance, and he's speaking with his own adjuster about payment of the claim. The adjuster tells him that the company will honor his claim and has decided to pay him $12,000. Jim replies, "I see. Why $12,000? That's how much we think the car is worth," the adjuster replies. "Okay, but how did you go about determining that? Do you know where I can get a comparable replacement car for $12,000? Jim wants to know. The adjuster, apparently thinking that Jim is haggling to get more money, says, "Well, how much do you want?" Jim says, I want what's fair and what my policy says I'm entitled to. I found a second-hand car for $15,500, which with tax will come to around $18,000. $18,000? The adjuster exclaimed. That's way too much. You'll have to come down some. The adjuster's caught up in the positional bargaining mode, but Jim keeps a firm grip on the pillar of legitimacy when he responds, I'm not asking for $18,000 or $13,000 or $20,000. I'm trying to work with you to figure out what is fair compensation for my loss. My policy promises to pay the cost of replacing my old car. I don't want more or less than is required to replace the car. I just want to be fairly treated. Okay, the adjuster says, still not understanding that Jim is not doing the positional bargaining dance. I'll come up to $13,500, but that's the best I can do. Company policy. Jim continues to focus on the search for a standard to determine the right compensation and asks, well, how does your company usually go about determining the value of a car in this kind of situation? The adjuster mentions that they sometimes refer to the used car guide, commonly known as the Blue Book. The conversation continues as Jim and the adjuster discuss the number of miles on his car, his maintenance records, its overall condition, and the like. All factors that add or subtract from Blue Book values. By persistently focusing on standards of legitimacy, Jim has skillfully steered the conversation away from a power struggle over positions to one in which the two parties are searching for standards they can jointly agree are fair, which will provide a basis for resolving the price dispute. In effect, Jim has brought in a third party, a neutral arbitrator in the form of the Blue Book and other objective standards that help the parties resolve his claim under the policy. So, rather than get trapped in the tug-of-war that positional bargaining incites, Holly would be better off asking questions like, is that customary practice in the industry? Or, what's the basis for doing that? By asking these kinds of questions, Holly is bringing the legitimacy element into play. Legitimacy is the third player in the value creation process. By focusing on or invoking legitimacy, Holly and other negotiators can test the fairness of options proposed by other parties. Words and phrases like industry standards, legal rules, what we've done before, reciprocity, custom, and the views of third parties all indicate an appeal to legitimacy. Using the strategic negotiation process well helps us both create and expand the pie, but it also gives us tools and techniques with which to divide the pie fairly. Again, this is about using commonly recognized standards of legitimacy, including the reciprocity principle, to determine who should get which slices of the pie. In the first 3 lessons, we've introduced 5 of the 8 elements of negotiation: the factual context, communication, interests, options, and legitimacy. In Lesson 4, we'll talk about how Holly can grow relationships of trust as she negotiates. Thanks for watching.